Hey everybody, my name is SPAZ and I'm a CD junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about a band that maybe a lot of you are not that familiar with, but you really should open up your minds and search this stuff down because it is absolutely fabulous. The band I'm going to be discussing is a quartet by the name of New England. Now, I know some of you go, oh, it's the AOR or the melodic rock or the arena rock, but no, it's more than that. Trust me. New England, their first album, came out in 1979. That's about the time that I heard them. I heard the single, Don't Ever Want to Lose Ya, and I thought, oh, that's nice. It's got a catchy hook. But, back then I was into The Clash, The Jam, Buzzcocks, Yachts, bands like that. And these long hair bands, I wasn't paying too much attention to because, let's be honest. At this point, I was kind of wary of any band with long hair. Especially like mustaches and shirts with cut off sleeves and stripes and mullets and stuff. But New England were different. They didn't have any of that stuff. Sure, they had the long hair.
Hippies.
They were just a great thumping hard rock melodic band. Now imagine ELO, Queen, Boston, and Shoes. Throw them into a blender, mix them up, add some whipped cream, add some hot sauce, and just pour it in a glass and just friggin' take it all in because that is New England. It is just this great, this big, punchy, wonderful ball of melodic rock that will definitely just tickle the fancy of anyone who loves ELO or maybe the Lennon side of the Beatles, that type of songwriting. John Fannin, the guitar player singer, was a great singer-songwriter. Hirsch Gardner on drums and backing vocals. Jimmy Waldo on keyboards and backing vocals. And Gary Shea on bass. Just this great big crunchy wall of goodness. And this album here was produced by Mike Stone and supposedly Paul Stanley, but who really knows? But this is jam-packed full of great melodic rock. If you've been scared of getting into them because you think it's the AOR stuff, it's really much more than that. If these guys had cut their hair, wore skinny ties, turned their amp volume down to maybe 7.5 or 8, they'd be classified as a classic power pop band. But no, these guys did it their way, and it just came out fantastic. This came out in 1979, self-titled, definitely worth every bit of your time. Mike Stone, like I said, produced it. John Fannin on some of these songs kind of reminds me of Gary Kleeb's songs on Shoes Present Tense, and Mike Stone produced that as well. So New England self-titled album, definitely worth your time. 1980 rolls around, and out comes Explorer's Suite, which is another great collection. They maybe went out a little bit, maybe got a little bit more creative with the arrangements. It was still produced by Mike Stone, and the songs were just... sometimes it makes my heart hurt. These songs are so good. But it's melodic and just jam-packed with hooks and harmonies. These layered harmonies on both these albums are just fantastic. And that's, obviously down to Mike Stone, but it's also obviously down to the band, because they just kept coming up with great material, great songs, and that's definitely worth your while. Now, 1981 comes around, and out comes the album Walking Wild. Interesting thing about this album, it was produced by Todd Rundgren. The name Todd Rundgren comes up and you're thinking Badfinger, XTC. But no, this is probably, in my opinion, it sounds like the perfect blend of New England's first two albums mixed with Utopia with a little bit of Pursuit of Happiness in it. So it's still crunchy, it's still edgy, but it has great hooks. He's turned some of the keyboard stuff up, and instead of Jimmy Waldo just laying these atmospheric beds for the music, sometimes they're a little bit more upfront than on the first two albums, but it's still chock full of great songs, and definitely worth your time. It can actually even get crunchier than the first two albums, which is strange because you would think that Todd Rundgren would have led them down a more melodic path, but no, he did not soften the edges of their rock crunch. So that's another fine album. And sadly, that was it with New England. After only 3 albums, the band sort of called it a day. The great thing is, though, is they did record a lot in the studio. Demos and, in different various studios building up to like the first album. This 5 CD set, which came out on Cherry Red, New England Archives Box, Volume 1, this contains 5 CDs. This contains early demos of songs that made the first album, and it also has songs that never made that first album. and just everything is hook filled. You can tell just by listening to this that it wasn't Mike Stone that brought out that great sound in the band. It was actually the band. I mean, these guys are really, really talented. And there's a disc that features early monitor mixes of like the second album, and there's a disc that features like studio live demos of songs they were working on for their fourth album. And I'll tell you, some of that stuff is just fantastic. But that is it with the actual New England CDs that I have. But I do have a couple more here. Now, Jimmy Waldo went off, and he's worked with a couple bands like Alcatraz. He was one of the main guys behind the hard rock band Alcatraz. Alcatraz was the band that gave us like legendary guitarists like Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve Vai. And but it was just a great hard rock band, and they had a series of albums. And Hirsch Gardner, the drummer, actually put out 2 albums. There's Wasteland for Broken Hearts, and there's My Brain Needs a Holiday. Both of these are really jam-packed with great New England type songs. Just the layered harmonies on these things. And it's not just all one thing. Both of these albums are a little edgier than New England, a little harder, a little more powerful. Some of the songs rely strictly on harmonies. And it's really nice to hear Hirsch break out and do some of his own stuff. He's got a lot of guest stars on his albums. But this album here has a song called More Than You'll Ever Know, which is fantastic. And it's actually all of New England, all 4 members of New England performing on it. So this album features a New England song with Hirsch singing lead on it, but it's just absolutely wonderful. And the last thing I want to show you, John Fannin actually put out a solo album called Saved All the Pieces, and this is really laid back, acoustic. There's a lot of songs on here that have a lot more than that. All these songs could easily have been New England songs. There's a song on the album called Just Run, which has Jimmy Waldo, so I guess that song is technically to England. But anyway, this John Fannin is absolutely fantastic. You can get this at johnfannin.com, by the way. Anyway, that's it for this video on New England. I really appreciate you hanging out, and if you really want to hear some ELO meets Queen, Boston and Shoes, great rock. Maybe power hard pop would be a good terminology. But is it power hard pop? Doesn't sound right. But anyway, check out New England. Fantastic band. And it's just great rock and roll that's going to hit you straight in the heart. Anyway, that's it. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this. Check out New England. Check out my other videos. And remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, please. And until the next time, smell you later.